Disney cartoons have always been interesting, whether it's classics like DuckTales or more recent releases like, well, DuckTales. Other recent cartoons they produced have been amazing, from Gravity Falls to The Owl House to even newer things like The Ghost and Molly McGee. But the newest show from Disney and Marvel really stands out: Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
This show focuses on Lunella Lafayette, a superhero protecting New York's Lower East Side. Like any superhero story, there is plenty of morality to dissect, so let's get into it. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur characters, good to evil. Also, obligatory spoiler warning, as this show is still currently running, and we only have 11 episodes to work with. As usual, let's get started with the most noble character and work our way down to the most evil. These characters are the good. The gold medal of good goes to Lunella Lafayette, or Moon Girl. Lunella is a young woman who lives on the Lower East Side of New York, where she takes up the role of the suburb's only superhero. She takes her role very seriously, and is the smartest person in the entire universe, where she creates a set of gadgets to work against crime.
The best we can do is stop blackout crime in its tracks.
Lunella forms her crime-fighting persona specifically to help save the LES, all because it was in danger thanks to Aftershock. Lunella spends nearly every episode trying to help people and save the LES. Even in episodes like Moon Girl's Day Off, she knows how important it is to be a hero, and this causes her to feel very bad about taking a break. Lunella knows what it means to be a hero, and while this tends to lead her into pushing herself too far, she tries her best to balance her life as a hero and as a girl. This is shown in Goodnight Moon Girl, where she has to act like a normal middle school girl when she's invited over to a sleepover and has to deal with mind-switching shenanigans. Lunella is a superhero who does everything she does for good reasons, which proves why she earns the gold medal of good. The silver medal of good goes to Adrian James Lafayette Jr. Adrian James are Lunella's parents and the owners of the Roll With It roller rink on the Lower East Side. They prove to be caring and nurturing to Lunella, even though in episodes like Check Yourself, they do game night without her because they don't enjoy her competitiveness, and they do lie to her on multiple occasions. Adria, however, is who really pulls the weight, as it's revealed in Like Mother Like Moon Girl that Adria is a woman who fights to better not only her family's well-being, but for the well-being of the entire LES. They care about their daughter and their community. The bronze medal of good goes to Casey. Casey is Lunella's best friend and Moon Girl's manager, a girl who knows what she wants and how to get it. She spends her time on screen doing a majority of unique and interesting things to make sure Moon Girl becomes famous. However, this leads to her hyper-focusing on things that don't matter, or not seeing how dangerous the situation really is. In Run the Rink, she focuses much more on the fact that Lunella seemingly has a rogues gallery, rather than how dangerous it was for the villains to show up at the rink. Casey uses her abilities to help Lunella at every opportunity, although she does at times push a little too far. She'll do anything to help Lunella. This gets to the point that in Moon Girl's Day Off, she takes over as Moon Girl and fights Abyss, despite knowing that she's not that great at the combat aspect of superhero work. Casey cares about her friends, her family, and of course, her brand, as she'll do anything for any of those people, so she needs to land here on our list. Next is the titular Devil Dinosaur. Devil Dinosaur is Lunella's partner in crime fighting. He comes from an alternate time and or place that Lunella accidentally summoned in the first episode, Moon Girl Landing. After a series of events, he starts to help Lunella throughout her many adventures. Sure, there are episodes like Goodnight Moon Girl, where he seems to cause issues just because he can. He wanted to switch brains with Lunella at the end for no reason. In Teacher's Pet, he gets very jealous of Angel and causes him to run away and nearly get harmed, although he is very apologetic for this as he tries his hardest to rescue the small hamster. In Moon Girl's Day Off, he tries his hardest to stop Casey from fighting, worried not only about her safety, but to stop her from finding out about Lunella. Devil is a good boy for the most part, but it doesn't help that he sometimes does stuff just to mess with people. Rounding out the good section, we have Mimi and Pops. Mimi and Pops are the grandparents of Lunella Lafayette and recurring characters throughout the series. They honestly don't do much throughout the series, especially Pops, as Mimi has more interesting things going on in multiple episodes. Pops is the best roller at the roller rink and is constantly rolling about. Mimi, on the other hand, is a chef of great proportions and uses most of her screen time to espouse great wisdom.
Always be proud of who you are, little girl.
In the bully of the borough, she tells Lunella not to be too worried about what the internet says, and she picks up on Lunella's lying in Moon Girl's day off. Mimi tries her best to give the best advice she can, and it's heavily implied that she knows of Lunella's identity. Mimi and Pops are good people, but they're also not the type of people to be on the front lines 9 times out of 10, hence the ranking. We now move on to talk about our more morally neutral characters. This is the gray area. Starting off the category, we have Eduardo. Eduardo is another student at the school that Lunella goes to, and a recurring character that appears throughout the show. Eduardo initially seems to be a bully, but that idea is quickly squashed in later episodes. In The Beyonder, he appears as Lunella's science fair partner and tries to convince her that he's not stupid and worth teaming up with. Eduardo tries to be a good kid, but often falls into some pretty obvious trappings of a young boy.
We can finish this baby tomorrow before the fair. Can't wait.
It's also implied in Skip That Adolescence that Lunella and Eduardo go to prom together, and he seems to be happy with this. Eduardo is not a bad guy, but he's kinda dumb and not the best person either. Next is LOS 307. LOS 307 is an AI brought to the school in the episode Check Yourself. When they appear, they seem initially bored with most people since they were so much smarter than everyone else. However, upon meeting Lunella, they hit it off as rivals in intelligence, and at first, LOS seems good. However, after Lunella causes a meltdown, LOS gets murderous, kidnaps Casey, and nearly kills Lunella, all as part of a game. However, by the end of the episode, they seem alright and have gotten much better, and since it wasn't exactly their fault for their murderous intentions, we can't rank them much lower. Next, we have Maine. Maine is the main villain from the episode Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow, as she is Lunella's hair brought to life by an experimental hair product that Lunella made.
Now I'm the baddest supervillain there is.
Maine uses her time alive specifically to mess up everything that Lunella is working on, whether that be robots or destroying the wigs that Casey keeps around. Maine brings other things to life just to use as her minions like Devil Dryosaur. Maine ends up fighting against Lunella due to how she was treated, and after some kind words and apologies are exchanged, they make up, and Maine becomes Lunella's hair once more. Maine isn't all that bad, becoming a villain due to abuse she suffered, and she definitely atones for it. However, unlike LOS, she becomes a villain out of her own sentient choices, rather than due to a malfunction. Now we have Abyss. Abyss is the main antagonist of Moon Girl's Day Off. She is a 4th generation supervillain that fights with Moon Girl and then Casey Calderon. She was essentially groomed into becoming a villain because her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother were all supervillains. However, it becomes clear that she hates being a villain and even calls her mother to let her know that she won't be a villain anymore. Abyss isn't all that bad when it's all said and done, as she doesn't stay a villain by the end of the episode, so she happily ranks here. Rounding out the gray area, we have Angelo Siphonator. Angelo was an activist who suddenly became very jealous of Moon Girl and what she'd done, which led to an alien symbiote by the name of Siphonator to attach to him and turn him into a literal troll. This troll started to harass Moon Girl repeatedly, only to draw her out and bring the two into an all-out fight. Siphonator not only fed on, but drew power from people being affected by his trolling skills and was easily defeated once this was figured out. However, once he had grown strong enough, he tried to murder dozens by bringing down a major bridge. This was done for 2 reasons. The first was just to cause chaos and make Moon Girl look bad, and the second was so he could become famous. Siphonator is a monster who cares for nothing but fame and power. However, because Angelo is not in control, he can't rank any lower, because he's a good person who fell into bad hands. Now it's time to talk about the worst character on the list. These are the bad to evil. Starting off the section, we have the Beyonder. The Beyonder is the overarching antagonist of the series and the main villain of the episode of the same name. The Beyonder is a spacefarer with the abilities of omniscience and omnipotence, where he can see and know everything that happens across the universe while also shifting the universe as he sees fit. The Beyonder arrives on Earth to study it, using Lunella as a place to touch base so that he can obtain information on humans. He threatens to erase humanity if she can't prove their worth.
Let's get this over with so we can grab some dinner. I'm thinking tacos.
However, by the end of the episode, it turns out that he actually changed his mind and now decides to just mess with Lunella, mostly filling in to give the audience backstory on the villains or other characters from the episode. The Beyonder would rank lower, but as he has no intention to be a true villain to Lunella, he doesn't land anywhere else. Next is Rat King. Rat King is a mutated rat who leads an army of rats from the New York City sewers. He's the main antagonist of the episode Teacher's Pet, where he spends the episode episode hunting down and getting revenge on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, thanks to her foiling his earlier plan. Rat King's big plan is really just to steal pizza and live happily in the sewers, which is pretty much nothing, so we don't really find him all that evil. However, he does actively try to kill Moon Girl and tricks Angel into thinking he was part of his army, only to then hate crime the hamster.
You were never one of us!
Rat King is a good-for-nothing annoyance whose big plan is little more than petty theft. Grabbing the bronze medal of bad is Marcy and Marty Muzzler. Marcy and Marty are villains from the episode Like Mother, Like Moon Girl. They were tech geniuses who created something called the Muzzler, which allowed people to completely dissipate sound from coming to them. They try to expand the LES by gentrifying it, becoming authoritarians that try to make everything gray, silent, and colorless. They then try to actively kill and harm Moon Girl where she doesn't fall in line. They don't care a lot about others, only doing what they want to do and ruin everything in their path. But real quick, before we get to our last entry, if you're enjoying this video, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. We ask because we'd really appreciate the help getting to our next milestone, and we have lots more videos we'd love to share with you. Thanks a lot, guys. The Silver Medal of Evil goes to Allison Dillon, or Aftershock. Allison Dillon, better known as the science teacher Miss Dillon and supervillain Aftershock, is the very first villain that Moon Girl faces in the episode Moon Girl Landing. Aftershock starts draining power from the LES, causing mass blackouts in the city, and she only does it to recharge herself like one would do to sleep. Aftershock uses her powers to harm the community, and she makes it clear she doesn't care about the community. Aftershock nearly kills Moon Girl on multiple occasions, and then threatens Lunella in her civilian disguise.
I'll do to your family what I did to your dinosaur.
Aftershock only takes the second spot at the bottom because she seems to be doing it just to keep herself alive, which stops her from taking her bottom spot. The Gold Medal of Evil goes to Gravitas. Gravitas is the main villain of the episode Run the Rink, where he works as a gravity-based villain on the Lower East Side. He robs banks by literally floating safes out of the bank and then riding away. He's taken out by accident by Lunella and Devil Dinosaur, and he vows revenge. He then goes and tries not only to get revenge, but nearly kills Lunella and dozens of other innocent civilians. Gravitas threatens to float the entire rink high into the sky and then seemingly slam it back to Earth, using inertia to slay an entire rink's worth of people.
You can't escape gravity.
Gravitas takes our bottom spot because he is the least sympathetic villain, a man doing what he does only to harm others. Alright guys, that's it. Let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.